Alright, so Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, or should I say the man who is in charge of the executive branch of government of the United States. This is yours. As you know, I have already done previous videos about you on other pages and so on, right? And I have written to you directly. I'm not sure if the bearer or the person who is designed or elected to take the mails from the post office had done his or her job. However, it was shown that the mail was delivered. So I arrive at that conclusion that you obviously the mail was obviously delivered. Not to take away from the fact that I am fully cognizant of the fact that there's a lot of times persons who picks up the mails from the post office do not directly bring the mail to the recipient of the mail. However, that comes with criminal charges, as we know, right? And we don't want anyone in the organization to be misrepresenting the company when the company is designed to carry out its executive duties, right? As I said, obviously you have gotten an unwritten letter of mine, as well as the letter does includes a substantial evidence of the fact that there was indeed an act perpetrated, and obviously the matter was dealt with individually by the person who is speaking and by those persons whose name is on those instrument that was presented to you, because obviously we noticed that with recent news surrounding the Venezuelan executive officer, I believe that you had the executive power obviously to take charge of these matters that is presented to you, because obviously we have a executive prime minister in the place commonly known as Jamaica that goes by the name Andrew Holness, and his fellow I call him co-conspirators, because they are all involved in these sort of crimes, by the name of Anthony Anderson, right, who perpetrated those crimes against me. And whenever those instruments was presented to discharge these matters, there was no respond, and I have corresponded with letters and evidence of the fact to these criminals that there was indeed a criminal offense perpetrated on me and my person. However, that individual by the name Anthony Anderson obviously was promoted as ambassador while he he inflicted those pain and suffering and also on me, and obviously he ran away from his responsibilities. And obviously when I really evaluate the Maduro's, which is the Venezuelan former president or prime minister president, his drug related crime was even more lawful. He was actually in his lawful capacity to actually supply the drugs to his his customers, obviously, because I'm not condemning no drug dealer whatsoever. Because if the morgue niche is to get bodies to bury, then the drug dealer should be okay to conduct his business as a businessman. I strongly believe that, because obviously he is not causing any harm, he is not forcing anyone to buy his product, or he is not taking anyone's life. So therefore his job must be legal to carry out. However, that man was arrested, and I personally have presented a case for you right in front of you, and I have already presented it to the Attorney General in the place commonly known as Jamaica, and I have already informed the, I believe, the overseer of the administration, which is Patrick Allen, about these heinous crimes, and I obviously have presented the matter to the man commonly known as King Charles, and there was no respond. And I strongly believe that all these communication that I have initiated or presented to these administrators of the respective companies, all these communication are within the law, or it did not break any law within the postal union or the postal service. These are lawful acts and letters that can be read publicly without harm or damage to any of the media viewers. So in this scenario, I have seen that on multiple levels there crimes was committed against me where I was presumed as a bankrupt pursuant to what we call the Bankruptcy Act or the Insolvency Act, and specifically section 268, which talks about or deals with the Postmaster General and the trustee of the companies. And obviously these trustees of their respective organizations are not carrying out their fiduciary duties, including the financial institution who have not been carrying out their fiduciary duties. So I presented that matter to you with high hopes that the president would actually carry out his duty, because he have the right and the opportunity and, well, the right to say, to carry out those duties. Because obviously I've seen a lot of videos with the president having meetings with Japan president and so on, about bilateral meetings. So therefore these contracts should not be aiming in a one directional path. There should be, these contracts should be on both sides, both the recipient and the sender, or the receiver and the giver. it should be both on both sides. However, these men are obviously abandoning or abdicating their fiduciary duty, which is in the law for them to carry out, while they are basically distributing my properties to unknown persons who I don't owe, but I strongly believe that they owes me, right? And I do not have anything personally against you, Mr. President, or anyone for that matter. But obviously, persons have been, including yourself, who use my energy to, I would say, energize your win to your public seat, including your Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, right? And this video is done on the 19th of March 2026, which may be uploaded at a later date because of ongoing scenarios. So, Mr. President, this is yours. And I said we demand your intervention or your executive intervention in these matters, because these governments are obviously conducting business under the postal union or the postal service, so therefore they are not exempt. And these criminals, including deputy prime ministers and so on, does not respect a superior jurisdiction, even when it in the constitution it states that for one to become a prime minister, basically they must be able to take orders or communication from other jurisdiction. That's not word for word, but I can point it out in section. So I'm gonna add it on to the page, but it is there in that particular section for persons to see. So, Mr. President, we demand your intervention in these matters, because these men are obviously have been holding back my resources, my assets from the year 2021, and I've been using those time for different reason, and we demand your intervention in these matters. Thank you for your cooperation to these matters, even though I've seen Brian Barron rather Trump in my energy as well. I demand your intervention in these matters.